everyone, it's Dwight Streu here, the Dwight Streu Real Estate team, and I wanted to talk to you today about surprises. Now, I'm not talking about surprises like on Christmas Day or surprise parties. Those are all good surprises. When surprises happen in real estate, unfortunately, they're usually not good. Nobody likes surprises in a real estate transaction. Usually they end up costing you money. So the reason I bring this up is I was surprised this week by something that happened in a real estate transaction. Now, you'd think after 33 or 34 years in a business, nothing would surprise me anymore, but this one definitely did. And so I'm going to share the surprise with you in a little bit and also tell you how to avoid it, because it's really actually quite simple. Now, if you're buying or selling, you'll want to listen to this because even as a buyer, you're going to want to know this is an important document that you want to be familiar with. If you're selling, this is probably the first and most important thing you can do before even putting your home on the market. So if you have any guesses, type in, let me know if you have a guess as to what this important first step is. And if your guess is to call me, well, I can't tell you you're wrong, that's a great first step, but that's not what I'm looking for. In fact, what I'm looking for is to order and have a current real property report and compliance certificate. Now what that is, it's a document, it's actually a survey of your property. Okay, so you're gonna get this from an Alberta land surveyor. It's gonna show you the property outline, and it's gonna show improvements on your property like fences, decks, hot tubs, all that sort of thing. Now, why do you need this? Well, there's a clause in the offer to purchase contract that says the seller will provide the buyer a new or current real property report and compliance. The buyer wants this because they want to know what they're buying. I mean, they don't want any surprises. They don't want to inherit any problems. And so this is really the only way that you can prove that your property complies. Now, this applies to all single-family homes, also duplexes and bare land condos, but not conventional condos. You don't have to provide one. But if you have one of the other property types, this is a standard part of the offer to purchase contract. Now, what I see a lot of is people going ahead and signing an offer to purchase contract on their home, and they don't know whether their property complies or not. And that's a big mistake, because once you've signed that contract, you don't have any wiggle room. You've got to make your property comply. So, what happens if it doesn't? Now, everybody thinks their property complies, but you'd be surprised. Probably half of the ones I see come back don't comply. And it could be little things, and it could be more major things. So lots of the things that we see are not having appropriate permits for decks or hot tubs. Yeah, even outdoor hot tubs require a permit. Often fences that will encroach on city property, those require an encroachment agreement, so those won't comply. Or if you have a retaining wall that encroaches on city property, you might have to get an encroachment agreement for that. So these are all things that if you signed a contract, the buyer is in the right to make you or force you to make the property comply, regardless of the cost. So let's take the example of a fence, and let's say your fence encroaches on city property, and I mean, I've seen them where they're over $10,000 if it's a long enough portion of fence. So you might say, well, yeah, I'm not going to pay that. I'll just move the fence. The buyer said, no, that's not an option. Like, we bought the property where the fence is. You said it complied, so we want you to get the encroachment agreement, and they can make you do that. Another example would be you build a deck and you didn't take the appropriate permits, and the city comes back and says you got to take the permits. Now, if the city gives you the permits, great, it's not a big deal. It's going to cost you a few $100s and some headaches. But what if they don't give you the permits, right? So typically what's going to happen in that scenario is if you don't have this done by possession date, the buyer's lawyer is going to hold back some money from your lawyer. So in a case of a deck, maybe they're going to hold back $10,000. And if you get the permits, no problem, you're going to get your $10,000 back. But what if the city comes back and they're not going to give you the permits? What if you have to rebuild your deck? And that is entirely possible. So, what you want to make sure is that you know what you have before you sign the offer to purchase contract with the buyer. It doesn't mean that if your property has some issues, you actually have to remedy them. Not necessarily. The buyer may choose to accept those, but they're not going to accept them if they don't know what they're accepting. So you need the real property report to be able to say to the buyer, hey, my fence encroaches on city property, are you willing to accept it as is? And that becomes part of your negotiation. So again, you really want to have this document before you sign anything. So the surprise that I came across this week was, my client ordered the real property report, and it was at the city, getting the compliance, but in the meantime, we got an offer. So, I wasn't really expecting any big problems, but I knew there was a gazebo there that I wasn't sure if it required a permit or not. So we put in a condition, and it was a seller's condition to protect our client. And it basically said that, the offer was conditional upon the seller getting the compliance from the city. Now, that's not the best scenario because sometimes buyers don't like that condition. They don't want to wait because they could be waiting for 2 weeks, get their financing in order, pay for an inspection, and then the seller backs out of the deal. So buyers don't love that, and sometimes they won't accept that. But if we don't have it, it's really the best next step that we could take to protect ourselves. So anyway, city gets back to us with the compliance letter, and sure enough, there's a problem. And the problem is that there was no permit apparently taken for the garage. Now, the reason this is a surprise is it was an attached garage. It was attached to the house. And we could tell that it wasn't built later. Like, it had the same 1970 siding and the brick match. The concrete was all matching. So, we knew that the garage was not built after the fact. And yet the city says, yeah, the house complies, but there's no permit for the garage. Now, if we didn't have this condition in the offer, I'd be hyperventilating. It'd be a big deal, but I knew we were at least protected with that we could back out if we needed to. Now, long story short, we got that rectified and we were able to get...
Okay,
oh, there we go. We're back in business. So the question might be, well, listen, I have a real property report and compliance from when I bought my home 10 years ago or 5 years ago. Is that sufficient? Well, maybe, maybe not. Again, the terminology says it has to be current. So current means it shows everything on the property the way it is. So you might have one that's 15 years old, but you haven't changed anything outside, so it's current. But you could have one that's 1 year old and you added a deck, and guess what? It's no longer current. Now, again, it doesn't mean the buyer won't accept that. So sometimes we see properties listed where they'll say, the buyer assumes or agrees to accept the existing real property report. And that may be okay, but as a buyer, you want to make sure you know why. What's the difference between the existing real property report and the property itself? What's been added? If it's something minor, like a gate or maybe a ground level deck, something like that, that's not a big deal to accept something like that. But if it's a deck that requires a permit, maybe not. Again, it's just important that you kind of understand what you're getting. So, will your current one work? Certainly, if everything's current, then yes. If not, well, then again, that's something you're going to need to negotiate with the buyer. And if there's some minor differences, they'll probably be okay with it. But if not, typically buyers want permits in place. And so if you have something that you didn't take a permit for, probably a good idea to get a permit. So now the whole thing about this real property report is that this is a really easy mistake to avoid. It just means getting it done ahead of time. I mean, if you're going to get it done anyway, get it done ahead of time, and that's going to save your lawyer from cleaning up a mess later. And it's probably going to, cost you money. It's like that old commercial for, Fram oil filters, I think it was. A mechanic says, well, listen, you can pay me a little bit now by getting an oil change, or you can pay me a lot later by getting a new engine. I hope my daughters are listening to this. So, but the moral of the story is get it done ahead of time, and it's going to cost you a lot less money, a lot less hassle. Your realtor's going to thank you. Your bank account's going to thank you, and your lawyer's going to thank you. I've actually gotten calls from lawyers who I don't even know thanking me for encouraging their clients to get this done ahead of time because it saved them a lot of trouble, because usually the lawyer is the one who's cleaning up the mess. So listen, if you'd like more information on real property reports, I do have a more in-depth video on my YouTube channel, so you can have a look at that. In fact, there's instructions there on how you can go ahead and where to order the real property report in the City of Edmonton compliance, so you can check that out. If you like this video, I'd really appreciate your comments. It'd be very helpful. Like our Facebook page and share this video with others who might be buying or selling a home. If you have any questions, or maybe there's some topics you'd like me to address in future videos, please go ahead and type those in, and we'll get to those in future videos. And if you want to be notified of future videos, just click on the notifications. Hey, I hope this has been helpful to you guys. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you have a great day.